How do you develop your palate? How does a cigar's size and shape affect how it smokes? What's a good budget cigar? Does a pricier cigar mean it's a better cigar? Do all of these ratings and reviews you read online really matter? These are all questions new and seasoned cigar smokers have, but sometimes feel embarrassed to ask. That's why I've asked these questions for you to some of our guests this season on Deep Cuts Live. This is our first full-on tip show where you'll get the answer to some of the common questions many cigar smokers have had at one point or another. Deep Cuts Live is all about helping you better understand what premium cigars are all about and arm you with the knowledge and information that will help you better understand and appreciate premium cigars and those responsible for making them. I hope you enjoyed this special show, and if you have questions you want answered, feel free to post it in the comments section, and it may be answered by future guests. Now let's get to today's first question. What is your best tip for a new cigar smoker?
Do not get fixated on one brand. That's number one. Number two, enjoy your cigar, which means don't puff every 5-10 seconds. You're not going to be able to taste a cigar. A lot of people say, I cannot taste a cigar. Well, it's because you're smoking too fast. I've smoked so many cigars. I could smoke a Grand Toro in 45 minutes if I rush it. But if I really want to taste it and I really want to enjoy it, it's going to take me an hour and a half at least, right? So number one, don't get fixated on one brand. Number two, keep elevating your palate. Keep trying different brands and smoke slowly. Number three, don't be worried about the brand. Don't be worried about what people think of what you're smoking. Because honestly, there is no bad cigar. Don't listen to me or anybody else. There's only cigars that you like and don't like. And last but not least, when you cut the cigar at the tip, don't cut too far in. You're gonna unravel your cigar.
I feel like the cutting one and the tip about smoking slowly are two things that we don't talk about enough. Because I know when you're new to cigars and people say just cut off cut the cigar, the rookie mistake is to cut off basically like almost like that whole, you're like, oh, okay. You're just like, and you don't know. And then like somebody will look at you oddly and you're like, what are they looking at? And it's because you cut so much. Like you really don't have to cut that much of the cigar off. And I do enjoy a straight cut because I think you get a little bit more flavor out of it than a punch. But I know a punch is cool. A V cut is cool. So whatever, to each their own. But it's like you don't have to cut half the cigar off. And like you said too, is to take your time smoking it because it's not a cigarette. It's not something that you're supposed to smoke in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You're really supposed to smoke a cigar usually over 45 minutes, an hour or more.
I think the last thing I should have said was ask questions, because the worst thing that can happen to a brand new cigar smoker, they get the strongest cigar. And now they get cigar sickness, right? I mean, how many times has it happened to you? It's happened to me in 24 years. It happened to me plenty of times. It happened to me 8 weeks ago. I made a rookie move. You know what that rookie move was? I went to get my blood work done at 6 a.m. It was a long line. And I had a Espinosa cigar in my back. Oh, okay. Why not? All right. Empty stomach. Ding, ding, ding. No coffee. Ding, ding, ding. Light it within 15 minutes. I was like, damn it. Should have. Why? I know better. I know better.
So is there one tip that from you, Luciano, that you would give new cigar smoker who can, to steer them in the right direction?
I'll give 3.
Okay.
First one, choose a cigar from what people call a boutique company. Don't go to famous brands, mainstream. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying because they have thousands of different brands. It's more likely that you find a good cigar within the boutique spectrum. Okay, so it's more chances you find a good cigar. Second thing is pay attention to the humidity of the cigar. Don't smoke a cigar that's soaking wet or is too dry. Make sure you got a cigar that's between 60 and 70%. 65, will be perfect, of humidity, ambient humidity. And third one is, uh, forget about this bullshit of keeping the ashes super long. This is not a sign. It's not a sign of good quality in a cigar. In fact, the more under fermented and the more humidity the cigar has, the easiest it is to hold the ashes. So if you want really experience a good cigar, make sure that after you smoke like an inch, just ash it out. Because you want to smoke the cigar, not the tar, not the ash. You want to smoke the content of the cigar. In order to do that, keep just 1 inch of ash. The ash is important to keep the cigar lit, so you don't have to relight the cigar all the time. Just smoke in the right humidity and pace yourself out. Don't smoke too fast. Don't smoke too slow, and enjoy. Those would be my 3 advices.
Do you have any tips for how to develop your palate?
So I would suggest, and I suggested this to Adam with Dreamer Cigars, is when somebody wants to develop their palate, find a good tobacconist. And, you can read as much as you want, but if you go into a shop and a good tobacconist is going to guide you along the way with your cigar journey. So he's going to like, hey, if you haven't smoked yet, here, try this. Then he's going to ask you, like, what did you like? What didn't you like? And so then he'll help you find your next cigar and your next cigar. And then eventually you're going to find one that you really like. And then you're going to go back to it. Then you're going to get bored of that one. And then he's going to say, hey, well, try this one. So a good tobacconist would be my suggestion there.
I know someone, as a second part of this question, someone reached out to me on social media a couple weeks ago, and they were saying that, or were there any cigars that didn't have like a woodsy or cedary taste to them? And I was like, well, in my opinion, I was like, that's kind of what, a cigar is like probably going to taste like. Like, you're not going to get, I think a lot of people get confused with flavors, with palates, because you read the reviews and they're like, oh, it tastes like dark chocolate and Cocoa Puffs and all this other stuff. And they're like, and then they taste the cigar and they're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. It doesn't taste like that at all. So, I think we have to figure out as an industry how to help people develop their palates and how to talk about flavors, and that, and the different parts of the tongue that get stimulated by different things. And maybe like when you say a cigar is sweet, you mean it may stimulate that part of your tongue. It's not necessarily, going to taste like cherry Coke.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, I'd suggest to go to a lounge and, start to befriend some cigar smokers that like have a good palate and smoke a cigar that they're smoking and just ask what those flavored notes are and just see if you can pick up the same notes. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll pick up something completely different. Nobody knows.
Someone wanted to know, how does a cigar's shape or size affect how it smokes?
So from my experience, that's actually a multi-layered question, because like you can have like a perfecto, right, which is narrow on both ends and fatter in the middle. That the as you when you light it, you'll get maybe a couple of different notes because it'll be more wrapper on the end. But as it opens up, you'll get a lot more flavors from it because now you're tasting more of the blend, right? So that's one way it can change. When you're looking at like a Parejo cigar, whether it's a round or whether it's a box press, I've had cigars that are this exact same blend, it's the exact same wrapper in a round and a box press, and they'll taste different because box press cigars sometimes because of the way it's box press, it'll make the cigar taste different. So you only know that by actually trying both of those. When it comes to like smaller ring gauge cigars, you're going to get more of a wrapper to filler ratio, high wrapper to filler ratio. So you're going to get more of the wrapper flavor as opposed to, like, for instance, it can't be the same. People say the same blend, but it can't be. Like if you do a 60 ring gauge cigar and you call it one thing, and you do that same cigar in like a Corona, well, it's actually not the same because they're going to taste totally different because it's going to be more. It's probably going to be a little bit more seco in that 60 ring gauge cigar or something like this. And the constant, and of course, the wrapper to filler ratio is going to be a lot lower, right? As opposed to a Corona, or Lancero, or something like that. So even that changes. So I always tell people to try different ring gauge cigars within the same line to see which one fits their palate.
So your question is, somebody wants to know, what's your favorite budget cigar?
Oh, wow. I think there's so many great budget cigars out there. Two that come to mind. I'm going to name one from my company and one from another company. So, I'm being very honest. Juarez. We make a cigar called Juarez. And I think from that $6 to, let's say, $9 MSRP price point, back in the day, it was a $4 to $6. Now I think a budget cigar has gone up a little bit. I think the Juarez speaks to so many people. It's this beautiful Mexican San Andreas Maduro cigar. It comes in the 52, 54, 56 ring gauge. We also have it in a 48 if you like a thinner ring gauge like I do. Extremely affordable. You can buy a handful of them and not break the bank. You can buy a box, and it'll probably be one of the more affordable, premium hand-rolled box cigars that you can get your hands on at that incredible price point. And then one that has not come from my company, I think Foundation makes a great cigar with Charter Oak. I think Charter Oak is a wonderful blend. Nick Melillo is a wonderful guy, and he makes a hell of a budget stick as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think even last week we had this question about someone wanting to know, when we say budget or a cheap cigar or whatever, in the cigar industry, price and quality doesn't always match up. Like
100%.
You can get an awesome cigar for under $10, and you can get an awesome cigar that's over $20. It could be, it just doesn't really, the price doesn't have much to do with the quality. And so people should try different cigars, I think, at different price points, because you never know what is out there and what you might like. Like I said, I think there's a lot of great under $10 cigars, and there are a lot of expensive cigars as well that maybe if you can splurge, it's worth trying just to kind of see what's available.
I'll tell you this. I remember this had to be close to 20 years ago. I was invited to a wine tasting, and they had 5 wines. And I'm no wine aficionado, but I do love a beautiful glass of wine. And I remember we had to rank these wines. And what was amazing was the most favorite wine of the night was the least expensive bottle. And it was like a $10 bottle of wine. And we had wines in that tasting that went from that $10 price point all the way to a $50 price point. And the most expensive one, if memory serves me right, was number 2 or number 3. So it was very high ranked as well. But I remember that $10 bottle of wine, it opened my eyes up, even in that world, that you don't have to have a $50, $100, $150 bottle of wine to have a great experience. And really what you're relying on is the skill of the winemaker, and cigars are the same way. You can get as elaborate or as basic or as expensive or least expensive. And you can have a great experience at any of those price levels.
Does a pricier cigar mean it's a better quality cigar?
You want to do it? You do it. Go ahead. So does a pricier cigar mean that it's a better cigar? Absolutely not. It doesn't. Just like so let's try to relate it. If you're new to cigars, we can relate it to anything else you like. If it's food, if it's a beverage, a cocktail, something that you like. Always, when you spend more money, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a better experience on it. It just goes back to knowing what you like. I think that's what's most important. Don't always buy a product, or don't always buy a cigar in this instance. Just because it's more expensive, you think it's going to be better. I think you do a little bit of background for it to figure it out. There are expensive cigars that are fantastic cigars, but at the same time, there's some cigars out there that are expensive that are just a regular cigar. So I think it's important that you do the research before. But simply to answer the question, a more expensive cigar does not mean that it's a better cigar.
But nevertheless, if you like expensive cigar, buy it. And then you try the expensive cigar, and then you try mine. And you compare the expenses with Nestor Miranda. So you make the decision.
Do cigar ratings and reviews matter today?
Yes and no. Because it's still subjective. And, say one side I rate something, I have a 96, and then another person get rated at 89. But then the scoring systems are different for everybody. There's no uniform like scoring system for what you're doing, so everything is really just subjective on what that particular person thought, you know. So I would venture to say more so towards no. Only reason why I send, like, say I send Cigars to Boston Jimmy, that's because people follow him, and that's just another way for me to, it's just promotion for me, you know.
Right.
So, you know, and like he's rated, like Lalibela, he rated a 95, if I remember right, you know. But like I said, somebody else can rate it a 91, you know, or a cigar aficionado. If they ever review my stuff, it could be lower, it could be higher, I don't know, you know. But it's all of that is just subjective, you know. And it's more so marketing and promotion, in my opinion. So
Yeah, and I think what people don't even know the history of cigar ratings. Like, you know, the rating system was kind of introduced in the same vein as how they would rate and review wine back in the 90s. So the way that we talk about cigars is kind of adapted back basically from how we talk about wine and how we rate wine. But as you said, the problem is that as more people kind of come into the cigar world, especially on the media side, the easiest thing to do almost is there's two things: either press releases, like repurposing press releases, or doing your own cigar ratings and
cigar reviews.
Yeah. And everyone, as Aric says, has a completely different rating system, and they also have a different palate. So what I like is completely different from what Aric likes and what I taste, because when I, you know, when I'm dealing with cigars, it tastes like cigar. I mean, I don't know. I was like, I can't pick up all the different like flavor notes that some people do. And that's kind of normal because it doesn't have any, you know, flavors inserted into it unless it's an infused or flavored cigar. It's supposed to taste like, as Manolo Casado mentioned during the trip, it's supposed to taste like tobacco. So you have to take these and
what it's like when Half Wheel reviewed the Warwick Lancetto. I think you smoked my Warwick before. I don't read cigar reviews, but I read that one, and I think it was Brooks that reviewed it. He said it was notes of peanut butter in it, and I was like, I was like, I smoked like 1,000 of those cigars and I've never tasted peanut butter in there, not once. But like I said, everybody's different. So and they rate different, and they taste different things, and it's based on what you ate before you smoked the cigar, or what you drank, or what you're drinking with the cigar. You know, all of that can change whatever the characteristic in the cigar is. So maybe Brooks had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before he smoked Warwick. I don't know. So, but but it's like you said, it's 100% subjective.
Yeah. So for those watching, and for that person who asked that question, so ratings, as Aric said, they can at least give you an idea of what's new, because you'll see a lot of new cigars kind of go through their whole rating process. So pay attention to it for that reason, but don't let it keep you from trying a cigar and basically doing your own rating. Like, the best review or rating is going to come from you. So that's Eric's advice and a little bit of my advice on the whole ratings and review topic for when it comes to cigars. So there are some people who think immediately before you light up the cigar, you need to remove the band. There's other people who say keep the band on until that burn line gets closer to the band, because if you remove it too soon, depending on how they put on the band, it might disrupt the wrapper, it might do something. So where do you kind of fall within that kind of spectrum of keep the band on, remove the band?
Well, let's hit them with some nerdy cigar history. Cigar bands are something that are about 100-something years old. For example, we've printed with Vrydag printers out of Holland and they gave me a book of their history, like 100 and something years old, and you see everything was going on, and then German lithography, the whole thing. But before that, cigar bands were put on because the only people who could smoke cigars at one point in the history of cigars was the royal family of Spain, and they had like white gloves, and they supposedly didn't want to stain their fingers with nicotine, stuff like, I don't know about that one, but they obviously became, how do you differentiate your cigar from the other guy's cigar?
Mhm.
So it's almost like modern day branding or marketing, and they started using the beautiful graphic history of this industry. A lot of it's getting lost because, my God, you look back and they actually use gold in the bands and things like that. The time to take off a cigar band is not really so important, but people say, let the cigar warm up or this and that. As the cigar heats up, it's going to expand a little bit. Okay, so if you're going to take off the band, do it before you even light the cigar. That's my opinion. Okay, sometimes we like the pectin glue that we use is vegetable glue. Like this one's like really tight, like whatever. You have to be careful you don't rip the wrapper, on the cigar. If it's Connecticut and things like that, just my opinion is, if you're new to it, just leave it alone. You don't want the wrapper to come off. I know some people are like, oh, I'm bragging because I'm smoking this, and it's cost this much, but it depends. If I really like the cigar band, I collect cigar bands, I try to be very careful and whatever. But I either I'm not too disciplined for it, but I usually try to do it in my case before I light the cigar. The cigar is not going to expand because of the heat, moisture difference inside. So I would say do it before you light the cigar. Be very careful with it, and try to, at this point in a cigar, by the way, my lighter sucked and whatever. At this point, start taking it off and just be very careful. Like this one's like too glued on, and just be very careful with your nails, and just, even though I wasn't careful there, but it's more like how close are you getting to the end of the cigar and things like that. But I don't know. That's did I answer that properly?
You gave a good explanation and a little bit of history.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of cellophane?
Okay. I don't know. Well, cellophane is there's a couple purposes. One is obviously to protect the wrapper, but it actually also helps keep the humidity and the moisture inside. And
it is porous, right?
Yeah, and people don't actually know this. It's not made out of plastic. It's actually made out of like a vegetable or a plant.
People always say plastic.
It's biodegradable.
It's not plastic.
It's not plastic. So
it's porous. Like Chris said, protects the cigar, but also as being porous and not plastic, when it's in the humidor, it allows the humidity to stay flowing.
Yes, I was going to ask that. So some people want to know, as an offshoot of that question, do you remove the cellophane when you put it in the humidor? Do you keep it on? I personally like to keep it on because I think, especially if you don't plan to smoke it right away, I think it just protects it. And
I keep it on, especially if it's with other cigars.
It preserves it. It preserves it too. I mean, honestly, like, listen, I always keep up my humidors, but gauges are a little off sometimes, and I've noticed that if I take a cigar out of the cellophane and leave it in there for a week, and the same cigar I'll put right next to it in cellophane, the one in the cellophane will be a little bit more spongier than the one that's been sitting outside the cellophane, because it's contained. It's almost like, I don't want to say like, because it's not exactly that technology, but just to kind of use metaphorically, it's almost like a Bovita where it's a two-way humidification. Like if it's too humid, it will block the humidity. Yeah. But if it's not humid enough, it will allow humidity to still get in, and it helps to maintain that level, that level of humidity within the tobacco. So I prefer, personally, I leave all my cellophane on, and honestly,
I do too.
You could see that it even keeps a lot of the oils trapped in, because if you ever leave a cigar for 6 months, a year, and you have it, properly, stored, humidified, and you take it out and you start taking that cigar out of cellophane, you see all the oil sheen in the dark. I mean, I'm sure you
Different
guys
color.
that's
Yeah.
different color, where it actually colors the cellophane yellow. Like that's all the oils, man, that have just been captured in there, that, encapsulated in that little thing, So, in my opinion, cellophane is a good thing, I mean, that's just my opinion. Now, but then you could say, all right, look at Padron. Look at Padron. Padron don't put cellophane on his cigars. Yeah, you open up a box of Padron, it's all on cellophane cigars, and his cigars are awesome. So, I guess it's preference. I don't know. Me personally, I like cellophane though.
Yeah, and I did read in I think there is a book actually called the Cigar Handbook.
Oh yeah, I have that.
And I read a part in that book when it talks about for people who don't, for whatever reason, like cellophane, or they want a compromise on this, I guess, somewhat controversial topic, that you can. I think it actually came from Michael Herklotz. At least he was attributed to this in the book. But you can like take the cellophane slightly off and like twist it at the top so that the bottom of the cigar is exposed in the humidor. So it's like I said, a little compromise for those people who want to try it out, like a little adult science experiment. If you want to try it out with that, just to see how you like it. But personally, like I said, I like to keep it on. It doesn't hurt the cigar.
Everybody knows there's no right or wrong way.
Right.
That's the greatest thing about this business. There's no right or wrong way, man. This is creating. It's just like a winemaker. It's just like a distillery that makes whiskey. It's just like, it's the same thing. There's no right or wrong way to do shit. There's a traditional way, a non-traditional way, outside the box way. But there's no wrong way. It depends on what you're creating. You don't tell an artist that's putting paint on a wall you're doing it wrong. That's his art. He's doing it. It's the same thing. Like, and I'm not equating us to these great artists, but this is an art in its own form. My grandfather made wine. Since I was a kid. That was an art form in its own way. He made his own kind of wine, his own way. Right. Proof that that he liked. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's no wrong way to do it. There's your way, the traditional way, the outside the box way. It's just on which path you want to take. But I don't ever tell anybody, just like you heard in the interview, like you want to do limited editions all day, just do LCA drops, and that's what you want your brand to be, and it's working for you, do it. That's not what I want to do. But if you're doing it and it works for you, God bless. Have at it. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. So it's just what works for you, man. And just, I think the biggest advice, me, and who am I? I'm a nobody. I've been in this business for 5 fucking years, But stay true to yourself. That's the best. If you stay true to yourself and you do what you want to do and don't listen to you take advice from people that have been in the business, Michael Herklotz, you just brought him up. We love Mike. Mike's been a big supporter of us since day one. He's a personal friend. So I take if Mike's going to give me some advice, I'm not going to do what he tells me to do because this is our brand. But I'm going to take into consideration heavily what he's saying because that would be stupid not to. This is a man that's been in the business for, Jeff has same thing, friends in the business that have been doing it a long time. You're going to take advice from those people because those people are only trying to give you advice to help you succeed. So you have to take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, stay true to yourself, man. Do you,
it works.
Go 150 miles an hour in your direction. And if you're genuine, true, and you're putting a really good product out there and you're really trying your best, I think people in this industry recognize that and will support you. That's really, that's the best. That's the way we're doing it. So, and so far it's working for us.